Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our next session. I'd like to introduce my next customer, City of Rotterdam,
Customer.
which is really an interesting customer because they live on top of our building in the Mendix office. So it's very easy as a customer success manager to visit them. They started over a year ago with the red development, with Agile, and yeah, that really worked out well. It's amazing where they are right now. So I'd like to introduce Eric van der Steen, Martijn Groenewegen, who are key to our success there. Just good luck.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Martijn Groenewegen. I'm head of the digital strategy department in the City of Rotterdam. And today we have a straightforward agenda. It's pretty easy. I'll explain you the why we started with rapid application development, as we call it. And Eric, who has been key to the success and building all the apps, he will do the main part of the presentation and tell you the how with examples of what we did. All right. I'll take you with me on a short explanation of the business environment for the people who don't know the City of Rotterdam. Shame, of course, on you. A little bit about the context about, 2 years ago or so, where we stood and what triggered the rapid application development movement. A little bit management consulting talk with value drivers, and then the main concrete part, which is what Eric will do. Okay, Rotterdam. Just a small visual impression of the city, bustling. It's one of the coolest places on earth, and which is not my line, but it's been acknowledged by Lonely Planet, inspiring and innovative. I've been a student in Rotterdam, and I started studying in 1990, and there was no bridge, there was no cool part of the city. Actually, there were a lot of junkies and things like this. And I think it's key to the culture of Rotterdam that we want to improve, always building stuff and trying to innovate. So we're always trying to, on a pragmatic way, trying to solve real problems. That's the heart of the real Rotterdam person. A little bit more than 660,000 inhabitants, a lot of nationalities, the second largest city of Holland, the biggest economic driver, of course. I'll let that sink in. Okay. The City of Rotterdam itself has about 15,000 employees, about 2,000-3,000 or so are external persons. We have 5 main business units who do public service, things like this. When we have 1 main business unit for services and support. So for controllers in this room, that's where all the overhead of the city is. So that's about 2.5, almost 3,000 people working in services. There's a yearly budget of 3.5 billion. It's not free to spend, a lot of it labeled by national government. And within this department of this business unit for services and support, there are about 900 employees working on IT, information management, and supporting the lines of business. All IT was centralized since 2004. So these 5 business units almost have no IT people. All right, so there's a lot of shared service here. There are 800 applications. We started out with 1,800, so we've rationalized about 1,000, and now we're building them again. So there's 15 RAD apps made in 2018, and at least 20 to come this year. That's where our ambition is. And in developing all these innovations, we're actually part of an active network of suppliers, vendors, people in the city, other governments. So we're always looking for new opportunities to innovate and improve the services to our citizens. Um, I think that's enough for the innovative side. We've set up a digital experimentation center, which is actually a special part in the IT environment, where so it's a sandbox environment actually. So we use this together with a lot of vendors who try to make new applications together with us. So there's a lot of co-creation there. I think that's about it on the innovation side. Okay, why work with Agile and RAD? And why do we call it RAD? RAD stands for Rapid Application Development. As I just said, a lot of IT was centralized in the shared service center, and which left almost no IT-savvy people in these business units. We had a lot of cost control challenges. So the traditional IT departments just wanted to cut costs on IT, and there was no actually service delivery on, say, innovation or new stuff. So there was a need for a bimodal service delivery system. We wanted to try out new stuff, work with prototyping, so we needed a little bit more flexibility. And we wanted to develop together with the business units in a co-creation way of working, so more agile working. We discovered that within these business units, there was a lot of shadow IT, and the IT department cursed a lot of this shadow IT, was not allowed, but on the other hand, there was a need from the business side for new functionality. So we thought, well, if we want to improve our service delivery model, maybe we should embrace the need for shadow IT and start to deliver on what they need. And here comes in the rapid application development way of working. So on the other hand, the GDPR has caused a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt within the business unit. So if they want to innovate, they're a little bit uncertain about what is allowed, how to do the data, how do you do your security. So they want to work with us as we have the expertise for security measures and things like this. So there's a lot of risk mitigation. And on the other hand, we want to compensate exiting knowledge. And this is what I mean with shared service. The shared service movement has caused a lot of IT knowledge going away from the business. All right, so if you don't have IT knowledge, then all the solutions that you offer should be, understandable for the business. And this is not a key competence of traditional IT people. So we need something in our service delivery model where you don't talk IT coding and stuff like this. And this leads to the conclusion that we should offer something low code, prototyping. Yeah. Here we are. There's so we want a service on demand in our public service to the citizens. So we're building apps and things like this on a agile way in a short time. Better use of employee skills. So a lot of people are just doing registrative work, and the apps that we built with RAD take away a lot of this administrative work. So they can focus on what they should be doing in public service delivery. On the other hand, if you take all this registrative work, administrative stuff away, it increases productivity in the workforce. The way of agile working is just a shorter throughput time. So there's a shorter time to market in all the apps that we developed. And a lot of stuff on compliancy, lower development costs because it's a shorter time, low coding. So you don't need very complicated development processes. And on the last side, we used this managed cloud service, which helps in deploying actually the apps in a much faster way than through our own IT data center processes. So the deployment is a lot faster. Okay, the decision timeline for Rotterdam. We started out with a work group with Java developers, which considered RAD or Mendix as the enemies of their work. And we called it rapid application development, which is, say, a neutral term, vendor neutral, so we can discover together if a rapid application development way of working is of added value to the service delivery model. And they concluded it is. And in June 2017, we did this limited market exploration, and we already had some Mendix apps running. And then later on, we just decided, well, maybe on a pragmatic way, there's no clear winner. OutSystems, Mendix, just seemed more user-friendly, the Mendix platform. And we just decided to scale up all the Mendix apps, so that we choose the enterprise platform. In November 2017, we had an executive approval for financing, and we just started out. From the outset, we said, well, if we can reuse existing functionality of other applications, then we do that. If the market offers standard functionality, then we buy this market functionality. And if we still can't find a clear solution, then it's a candidate for a Mendix app in this way. So we had some guidelines before they started out, and for the rest we've been, on a running train. We've discovered a little bit how it should be working. We wanted to work under architecture, and this is actually the work that Eric did last year. So Eric will tell you a little bit of the how we did it. Eric?
Yes, thank you. Right. When I compiled this presentation, came a lot of things I wanted to tell you. I tried to do it by heart, but it was too much information, so I used my paper to explain things to you so that I don't forget anything. I hope you'll bear with me for that. I was born almost 60 years ago here in Rotterdam, and I was raised about a kilometer from here, just on the other side of the park that's here behind Ahoy. I work for the city since 2008 in various roles in information management, and I started, as Martijn said, in March 2017 with a work group to see if agile working for Rotterdam could mean something. In December 2017, we acquired the enterprise license, as Martijn said. We did that because we didn't want to discuss the viability of the value for every app that we wanted to make. We just wanted to have the freedom to make apps even if they were on first sight perhaps not so valuable. And that has helped us. We didn't have that discussion anywhere. So in the next 20 minutes I will explain to you how we did it, and I will use the digital execution practice from Mendix for that, because that's what we used to implement it in Rotterdam, which goes by these 4 lines, and I'll explain for every line what we did and especially what we learned. So let's start with the people part. We started off with a centralized team, a ROT expert team as we call it in Rotterdam, which consists of an architect/integration specialist and 2 junior Mendix developers and myself as a coordinator. We work from the centralized information management department, so not from the IT development part, but especially from the information management, because we want the business interaction to be the primary focus of this agile working. From this expert group, we support and guide 10 hired staff who are creating the apps with our customers, and 3 citizen developers who are in certain departments creating apps. and we help them with guidelines for all generic issues like security, privacy, and UX and UI. With this expert team and the Mendix staff, we organized 6 portfolio sessions where we challenged the business owners to pitch the functionality they wanted for several time, but were not getting from the traditional IT department. So we had, all in all, I think about 30 pitches, and that ended up in 3 applications that we were building. And we challenged them on having value cases and a Mendix fit, and that delivered those 3 was the result. Also, we challenged them to have a product owner, a dedicated product owner, budget to create the app, and time to spend with the business consultants to really achieve the app. The citizen developers, we help, as I said, with the guardrails for several generic issues and connectivity. Also, we organized, as last point, Agile Scrum training for all the participants from the various business units. For most of them, it was quite new. So, what did we learn? We learned that having a dedicated product owner is key to the success. If they are not really dedicated, then you better stop your project, because it's going to take a very long time and you are not getting the functionality that you want, not with a speedy, not very fast anyway. What we could have done better was the Scrum Masters. We didn't start off with dedicated Scrum Masters. We divided over several team members, and that didn't work out very well in the end. So now we are trying to have more dedicated Scrum Masters from the start of a project, and that works much better. Celebrating your success. That's perhaps not something that people in Rotterdam do very easy, and we didn't do it, and that did not help. Our how do you say that? The knowledge of what we were doing in the organization was quite limited. Just the departments where we worked with, they knew what we were doing, but that was not very widely spread. And we tried to celebrate our successes a little bit more to let people know what we are doing. And apart from that, word of mouth spread anyway, and there were a lot of applications or requests coming to us, so we have plenty of work. Another thing is the knowledge and experience that several teams are building during making the apps, that it's not quite natural to share over the teams. And we did not stimulate that very much. So some things were done twice because we did not know that another team was doing it. And we are more focused on that now and making it more part of the project start. So that works also much better. The main goal of RAD was to implement the Agile Scrum way of working in the various departments. And that delivered an app that is nice, but we wanted another way of working implemented. The iterative part of Agile working was not very common and rather new for most of the people, but we keep emphasizing to the product owners and the participants that that's really what it's all about. Not trying to have everything right in the first place, but just build your app going along. And a continuous delivery is the result of this, and they are all happy with that. We decided upfront that we wanted RAD to be part of the IT architecture of Rotterdam, and the architect in the expert team has made overviews of the RAD landscape and the integration process maturity, which was not always very easy, I can tell you. Also up front, we discussed with the professional colleagues on security and privacy what elements they thought we should take in our approach and make by design in the applications that we were building. That resulted in a list of measures, and they were all possible on the platform, although we don't implement them all yet from the start. So we implement them when we need them, and they were fine with that. To spread information about what we are doing, we created a brochure that we circulated in our organization. And in that brochure, we said what the agile way of working was, what the business could expect from us, but also what we expected from the business. And we have an overview of all the products and services that we offer from our expert team. Also, we have on our internal collaboration platform, Alfresco, created a demo site with all the apps that we are making, and all the users, all the colleagues can view the apps in the app acceptance environment, so they get a feeling of what we are doing and what's available as functions in the various apps. And we gave numerous presentations to colleagues, all kinds of teams we went to and explained what we were doing, trying to get people to understand what the added value was of this ROT approach. Yeah, quality. To keep track of the various developments in the, we implemented AQM from SIG, which is a tool that gives you an insight in the quality of the apps under construction from several angles. So they monitor various elements within the app. We use this information to discuss the apps with our development partners and to it also gives us a monitor on the maintenance quality of the apps. So and we have a monitoring environment where we keep track of them. In September last year, after 6 apps live, we did a retrospective with Mendix staff, but also with all the development partners that you have and all the product owners. And that was really productive, gave us a lot of feedback that we used to improve our way of working, as you can see in the lessons learned that I'm discussing here. In the beginning, we were not too strict on the Agile Scrum approach. We hopped from one project into the other without really explaining from the start to the business what we expected from them. Although we had a lot of publicity or the brochure, but now we do a kickoff before every project with all the participants where we explain what Agile Scrum way of working is, what we expect from them, and things go much better now. The standing IT organization was another issue. Coping with the organization and the processes was something that was a challenge, because all those processes were developed in a Mode 1 waterfall world, and we, with the Agile Mode 2 approach, clashed every now and then. So we managed to blend in and slightly tweak some of the elements to our benefit, and yeah, it goes much better now. On the demand side, in Rotterdam, we have several processes in place, like information planning, portfolio management, and a demand, what we call demand supply process. And we have become part of all of those processes. So we are really embedded in that. Because we want to be able to maintain all the production apps ourselves and not be dependent on the development partners, we needed consistency under the bonnet, and that's what we achieved with. In the beginning, all sorts of rules were used. Every developer had his own way of compiling the app, but we wanted more consistency. And with our code of conduct that tells them how to build the app or the structure within the app and the microflows, that goes much better. And the guy who has to maintain the apps is not surprised every time by what he finds there. Then from the processes part, the last one is about testing. We have not spent enough energy and on testing. Of course, the customer, the business tests their functionality, but really we want during the development more testing done, and we are trying to figure out how to organize that. But that's something that really needs more attention. Then about the platform, the third P in this execution practice. The architect in the expert team has made clear overviews of the ROT landscape and the maturity levels of our connection points. We use that to assess the integration options for new projects. With security colleagues, as I said, we have agreed on all the measures that they want enforced for the various classification levels that we use. All are possible on the platform, as I said, although not everything is implemented yet. The corporate identity for Rotterdam is used in our apps. Although this corporate identity was very much based on printed matter, it looked a bit boring, to be honest. So we adjusted things a little bit to get more sexier apps. For mobile apps, it was altogether missing, and we created that ourselves. So we set sort of the examples for how a mobile app will has to look, and I will show you some examples later in my presentation. Then reusability, creating reusable blocks is something we wanted from the start. It has been a key feature to speed up development. We have them in our private app store that's available on the platform, but also in a GitLab environment because external staff cannot use them from our private app store. They cannot enter them there. The existing IT organization didn't find it easy to understand the position of the Mendix platform in our infrastructure. Rotterdam doesn't have a complete cloud strategy yet, and we decided to deploy only in the Mendix v4 cloud and not on-premise or anything. That gave some challenges in connectivity to our in-house databases, as you can imagine. We are realizing that through certified open tunnel connections at the moment. The Rotterdam IT infrastructure was not quite ready to interface with cloud environments. The integration specialists had to be very resourceful to find an appropriate solutions, and we still haven't reached the ultimate. For example, Rotterdam only wants VPN connections, where those are no longer viable on the Mendix v4 cloud environment. In the start stage, with a variety of developers, creating generic reusable widgets was a challenge that we did not manage very well. We have done some rework, had to do some rework to get that right, but it still requires our attention. And it's something that we need to look at. I also have a timeline about the approach, and what you can see there is the milestones and activities of our agile journey. As you can see, we use the start, structure, scale from the digital execution practice, and we have given ourselves 1 year each for the first 2 stages. So we are now in the structure stage. The first year was pleasantly chaotic, and we had to discover a lot of things, as you can see from this presentation. A very important milestone here is the retrospective that we did in September last year, and we will make that a recurring yearly event because we want to keep getting those feedback from the product owners. Another thing to mention is the gradual expansion of the expert team with other capabilities. Apart from more DevOps resources, we want to add testing, UX, UI, and performance management when we get more grown up in the agile world. Rotterdam is exploring the option to use the SAFe framework to extend agile working in our organization, and already several initiatives have been started. Finally, I'll tell you something about our portfolio. As I mentioned before, we began our ROT portfolio with portfolio workshops with the various business units. All the business units were invited, and as I said, we started building 3 apps with a Mendix fit. From there, the portfolio grew naturally. There were a lot of latent functional wishes within departments that found their way to our portfolio. From the start, our aim was to create generic functionality where possible, as I already said. On one hand, to create generic look and feel for the various users, and on the other hand, to minimize maintenance and to stimulate reuse. After the retrospective in September, last year, we tried to get some insight in the value cases of the 6 apps that were in production. That amounted to a value of over 1 million euros in a pessimistic scenario and 1.6 million euros in an optimistic scenario. So that is something to mention, I think. But we have to see in practice what can be achieved, because the business units themselves have to cash the value, of course. We can only help them make it clear. By now, we have a portfolio of 15 apps in production, 20 apps under construction, and we are exploring 10 other apps whether we can make apps from them, in a project. With a variety of business engineers working for us, it was difficult to identify generic functions from the start. Some were built multiple times, and we had to do some rework or re-engineering to get this right, and from now on we are more strict on that. We should have managed the portfolio and the content of the models more strictly from the start. We are improving in this matter by monitoring and discussing it more, and especially discussing it helps. The forecasted value cases of these 6 apps is a positive thing, of course, nice numbers, but ideally you want to do that up front before you start your project and set and discuss the KPIs with the business, because they are responsible for cashing the value in the end. We have done some projects and in retrospect did not have an optimal Mendix fit, and we are working on a checklist that will help us to define that better. Finally, I will show you some examples of the apps that we made in the past year, and if you want more detail on those apps, we can do that after the presentation. We are available here. So the first app is about incoming subsidies. Those were managed before with 4 different Excel sheets. One on subsidies, one on the projects, one on the tasks, and one on the finances. And the department took about a week to combine those to some kind of an overview, and then they started working with them. Those incoming subsidies are a considerable number of euros, and if you miss a deadline, then you don't get the subsidy. Those subsidies come from the European Union, from the province, or from the metropoolregio, etc. We created this app, and now nightly the data is updated, and they can use it for steering rather than for gathering information. And they don't miss deadlines anymore. So that's the biggest value here. And it looks a bit like this. Not very interesting. The TIS 010 app is used for surveillance and enforcement on... sorry, I'll go out of the way. Is used for surveillance and enforcement by about 300 of my colleagues on the street, where they can register all kind of things that you're not allowed to do in the city, and then give a fine or whatever. This was an app that was built and was running on an unsecure environment, and due to the GDPR, we needed to replace that, so there was pressure on it to get it delivered. But luckily, the guy who made it in the first place was now part of our ROT team, so he could just redo his work and have all the functionality in his head. And this is what this app looks like. We have a web version for the team leaders, and we have this version for the guys on the streets. The next one I want to mention is our RBP app. In Rotterdam, you can have a contract where you can reserve parking space for your visitors, but that's restricted to certain zones and certain times. We used a commercial product for that, but that went out end of life, and there was nothing else in the marketplace to replace it. So we decided to adapt the backend system that we used. It's called ParkSaver and was built by our Java colleagues. And we built the front end that the citizen uses to make his reservations, and that can be downloaded from the App Store and the Play Store. And this looks like this. This is our mobile design. We also built Treasure. Treasure is used by shopkeepers on the Lijnbaan here in Rotterdam, who used to put their garbage behind their shop and sometimes got a fine for that. But now we give them the opportunity to have it collected on demand. And so they set in the app what they are offering, garbage-wise, and when they want it, when they want it removed. And with a small cargo bike, we pick it up and we register it, because for now it's free, but in time we want to start invoicing for that service. And something worthwhile to mention here is that the MVP was made by students from Rotterdam College, because that's where they get Mendix modeling as a, they get it taught. That's not proper English, but right. Another app is for internal, but a very important one, because the city council got overviews of all the major IT projects that we do. Compiling that report took about 8 months. So usually when it got on the agenda, it was pretty outdated. They wanted that improved. So we created an app that contains all this information. And now it takes about a month. So rather than only reporting, it's much more used for steering now, and which is a good thing. And we have just started a second iteration with much improvements expected. This is kind of the dashboard that the council gets on all these projects. Finally, I want to tell you something about the BBA app. It is used for potentially all citizens of Rotterdam that need special assistance due to their circumstances, like home furnishings or study costs or all kinds of things that you can that you might need when your income is very low. Before this app, they had to fill in a rather difficult 7-page PDF with questions not in the right order, and well, it was just a messy thing. Usually a lot of went wrong with it, so they didn't send the proper evidence with it, and we have to get that afterwards, so the process took very long. Now they start off with 4 questions which determine whether they are anyway entitled to anything, and if they're not, don't bother, don't fill in anything. But if you fill it in, you have to upload your evidence per question, and that's all sent digitally to us, and then it works 6 times faster to get it processed, which is, I think, for the citizens a very good thing. And this is the start screen. This was my presentation. Thank you for listening. I don't know how much time. Oh, well, we have some time for questions. 5 minutes, okay. Anybody? Do we have a mic? Will you?
Hans Dietvorst, what challenge did you meet getting the right product owners from business in your teams?
They mostly underestimated the time it took for them to participate in a project. And I think in the project we kind of pushed them to spend more time and be aware of that the time they spent, they saw back in the quality of the app.
And additional, in my experience, decision lines bend when you're starting agile and working with product owners. Did you meet challenges in that aspect?
So I didn't get the first part of your question.
In the organization I was working in, decision lines were made by steering committees, etc. And getting product owners on the right place, they could make their own decisions. They had the authority to do that.
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of challenges in that. I'm curious if that's the same with you.
No, I don't think we had that very much because we didn't do many projects that were part of other steering committees or so. So they were rather smaller apps with people who could make their own decisions, and that they obviously had to get approval from their bosses or whatever. But that usually went very well. So we did not do much on that matter.
Thank you for your sharings. I have a question. What is the biggest challenge that you have faced? And the second one, in the portfolio part, you present the value part, and how do you trace it along the way? Is it a KPI that you monitor afterwards, or how do you monitor? Yeah, ensure your value part being realized. Thank you.
Well, the biggest challenge was, I think, to convince our internal IT colleagues that we were really doing something serious. And I think still some of them are not still not convinced. But well, I hope that things like this, you know, presenting this and perhaps getting an award for one of our apps helps internally to get them the knowledge that it's really valuable what we are doing. And about the value cases, yeah, well, we did that with Mendix together, and we had discussions with the product owners and just going through their processes. What are you doing now? What can you do better? What time do you not spend anymore on useless things like gathering information? And we tried to translate that into value. So we did not really set any KPIs yet. That's what I said was some of our lessons learned, that we have to do that better. So we are now going into the stage where we are going to discuss that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
for
a
the last
learning
year,
point.
yeah, for the last year or so, we didn't have a KPI for the business benefits. But this year, I think there will be. There's much more pressure on delivering. So I think it was actually easier last year because you had all the freedom to try your way of working. But we are very ambitious in our digital strategy, and but this has some extra cost components to it. So we have a KPI to deliver also on the money side. So this could be, well, making it more complex, but it's what Eric just said, that we want to do this business value case on upfront and not afterwards. So, no.
Hello, I have two questions. One on cost. So how big is the team average you spent on this project, or what is the mandate of this application that you spent? So some hints on that. And the other is, what is your qualification when you said that you are pre-selecting the topics that is Mendix fit or not? So what are the major criteria that you use?
Yeah. The second one. Sorry, I'm just. Yeah. Well, in some of the apps, I said what the cost were. I think. Yeah. This is the value case. Well, let's say on average it's between 30 and 50,000 euros that we spent on apps. So that's what the app size that we are making right now. So that's some are a bit more expensive. We are creating now one where we expect to be with two guys work a whole year. So that's obviously going to be more expensive. But up till now it's about that size. Sorry, a second. What we use to select the Mendix fit? Well, basically we say if the business is not really sure about what they want. So they want this agility to adapt to circumstances. That's one reason. The other one is if something has to be mobile about it, or mobile features, or native mobile features, where you have no other supplier that can deliver that. So that's usually when they come to us to make that. So I think that's basically it. Those are the two main reasons. Yeah.
How did you manage the maintenance of these applications? And two, how did you do the testing?
Well, testing we didn't do, so that's the easy question. No, of course we test. I expect the developers to test. So that's and we had a couple of applications made by Men Systems, and Men Systems bring their own testing, the ATS, into the project. So they were used for testing. And the maintenance, yes, we have one guy in the ROT expert team who is joining the various projects to know what's being built, who checks the code of conduct. Is it modeled the way we want it? And then he takes them into the maintenance. So he's the guy, he's the one who is maintaining all the production apps so far, apart from the ones that are made by another team who do their own ops, which is about 5 apps.
Only one person then?
So far, yeah. And as I said, we want to expand on these resources, and especially on maintenance is something where we see that we need more resources, because it's really getting too much for one guy to manage.
Thanks for the insights. I'm curious about, you mentioned Adapt ASAP, the generic components of all the apps. Can you give an, I don't know, an insight or an idea about what that saves you?
Having generic
Components and, you know, in the amount of apps that you have developed so far, can you give an estimate on what that saves you?
not in euro value, but I think in time,
In time,
time-wise,
percentages?
well, if you have to single sign-on, if you have to develop that every app rather than using the generic block, I think that's so far 14 times.
How many
one day.
generic blocks do you have now?
I don't know. How many generic blocks do we have? 8. Which goes from a single sign-on to a PIN code block that we have. We have an email connection. Yeah, geolocation. That's a validate module. So that's the ones that we have built so far.
Arthur van der Molen, Hogeschool Rotterdam. How are you preparing your interfacing with the existing systems? So all the, I mean, to build a new app is okay, but then you have to integrate with legacy systems or older systems in the, and you have special requirements sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we are now in the process of getting an integration strategy, and we are looking at what building blocks we already have that can be used there. And apart from that, most of the integration that we have to do now is with the Oracle environment, because all our business data is there, like finance, etc. And we recently acquired the Oracle Integration Cloud solution, and we are now investigating how to get a combination between Oracle, the cloud solution, and the Mendix platform.
Okay, a second question. Do you collect metrics about your applications like function points or other statistics from the Mendix app itself? Do you
No, I don't
automatically?
think we do that so far.
Not
Of
yet.
course, we do the points for the agile work and
Yeah, but
to
agile
get
points
your
is
to
always
get
a
your sprint
discussion.
planning, but not that
Not yet.
far. No, not yet. Something to improve as well.
2 more questions.
I would like to know what your arguments are for choosing a partner, because I see 6 partners for 6 apps. So I would like to know why this is.
Well, when we started this, we asked Mendix, we want 3 partners with different approaches on agile working. And they gave us a few names, and we got in contact, and in the end we decided which 3 we wanted to use. And for Rotterdam needs to publish works of a certain size to give the whole market the chance to subscribe to that. And that's where the other partners came from.
Does it help to create a center of excellence then?
Well, I think the ROT expert team with all the hires is the center of excellence. And we are going to acquire our own staff rather than hire. But we're in the process of getting that organized now.
But in the first year it was also financial. So we paid for the enterprise license centrally. And we just said if you want to have an app, you have to develop it and you have to pay for it as a customer. And we didn't have all the expertise in our in-house. So if you want to have a short time to market, then you have to expand on the implementation partners. And so we searched an ecosystem of partners to just upscale. But for the next phase, we're trying to make a center of excellence and get all the knowledge and expertise with our own people. But if we have scaling problems, then we use them again. So.
Last question.
Eric, you mentioned that your average development team consists of an architect/integration specialist and 2 Mendix developers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a situation where your development team is larger?
Sorry,
And
I
if
don't understand.
Do you have a situation where your development team is larger than those 3 people? And
Yeah,
if
of course.
so, do you have problems when you have a large development team?
Do we have problems? Well, some of the lessons learned were the result of having various development partners and various developers. So yes, that is something we have to manage better. And as I said before, the center of excellence, in my view, is our internal people, the ones I mentioned, but also all the external hired staff. I see them as part of this center of excellence, because I want to have discussions between them about the things they are making and how they are making it, etc. So we are also now in the process of getting more peer reviews and that kind of actions.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. Well done.